So with that, here I have the full-size Artisan Cutlery Proponent. This is a titanium handle, S35 VN steel blade, an absolute monster. Now, I do have both the large and also the EDC friendly size, but what we're going to do is specifically look at this larger model and do some hard use testing. Now, to me, this is just a little bit sensitive. Once you start talking about hard use testing, you really need to draw some lines. Now, for me, hard use testing with a blade like this, what does it exactly mean? So I feel like to get some good data points, you really have to ask yourself some questions. What is this knife used for? What is the intended purpose? What did the designer have in mind? What do we think appropriate testing is? And what do you benchmark along the way to really get some useful data out of this? Well, in order for me to draw some of those conclusions, let's go to the man himself, the designer of the Proponent, Dirk Pinkerton. Hey, Dirk, good evening. How you doing today?
All right, how you doing today?
Very good, thanks. I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking some time to talk to me today and spend some time with my audience.
No problem, no problem. Happy to be involved.
So real briefly, I just wanted to take a quick step back in time. We met real quick at Blade 2019 down at Atlanta. I was talking with David's son, who at the time was working with Artisan Cutlery, and we were talking about the Artisan Proponent. Now, that is a blade that you worked with directly with them, and we were kind of checking it out, and it was pretty neat. You actually walked right into the frame as we were going through the details of the knife.
Hey, there's Dirk.
Oh, it's definitely cool. So just for the audience who's watching, I'm in a little bit of a project right now where the Proponent is sort of a unique design where we're looking at a folder that has the ability to almost convert into a fixed blade. And the people at Artisan wanted some testing done. And when it comes to testing of a knife, I feel as though where you have a company's name, but also a designer's name on that knife, it's really important to take into consideration all of those factors and to actually represent these people appropriately. So where Artisan Cutlery is asking me to do hard use testing, I really wanted to work directly with you and kind of come to terms with some of the sort of definitions and different things and have a discussion about this to make sure that if we do testing, we're doing it in an appropriate manner.
Right. Yeah, no problem. I understand that. That makes complete sense.
So yeah, thanks. I'm glad you're willing to go through this process with me. I think it's pretty important. So for a little background for these viewers, what I was really wondering, you know, right now you have a project with Artisan, but you've worked with other companies in the past. What other companies have you done work with and designed for?
Wow, way back when I first got started, I worked with Meyerco back in 2009. That actually, we did some active designing for a few years, and then Meyerco decided they wanted to stop with the bringing outside designers on board. So there were the active designing ceased. They did maintain several of the projects until recently. I think the final one they closed out on was the Broadhead, and that was, I think they closed that out about a year and a half ago. So yeah, I was with them for a while, and also worked a little bit with a company, got started up with Del Ralph and Mike Manrose, called HTM Knives, which stood at the time for Hand Tech Made Knives. The idea was kind of to draw on a mid-tech bench-made kind of approach. Had a design based on my Broadhead with them, which that lasted for a short period. Company didn't survive, and shortly after they went under, I started working with Kaiser.
Yeah, that's where I became familiar with you, from Kaiser Knives.
Yeah, the interesting part of that is I almost didn't end up working with them. David had reached out to me after, was 14? I think it was 2014. I started getting emails from David, and it just said Kaiser Cutlery, and the email address looked like the typical email address you get after Blade Show, where you get all the Chinese companies and other vendors that want to get your business. So that's just what I assumed it was. I never answered his emails, but he was persistent. I think that went on for almost 6 months. And I finally said, well, okay, I'll bite. What's this guy want? And I'm very glad that I did.
I think a lot of people are, because you have some really great designs in that lineup. I've had my hands on a couple of them. They've performed extremely well. I'm a fixed blade guy, so the Little River Bowie for me has been an awesome, awesome little knife to use. And with your folders right now, I'm kind of taking a look at the Rogue. So a couple real nice designs in that lineup. So it's a good thing you partnered up with them for some work.
Yeah, I was very, very pleased with them. Early on, David, David, and you know the kind of guy he is. So he was always straightforward.
Yeah, aces.
He's just a really nice guy. And he reminded me that we had actually met at the SHOT Show. Oh, back in the last time I was in Vegas, I think it was 2011. He bought a custom from me. And nice. That's what he just was so taken with it. He said that's what kept my name in the back of his mind when he started working for Kaiser. And that just, I got involved with that, and he promised, how they worked and what they did and their standards, and that they were trying to prove that Chinese knives weren't the cheap gas station knives that you get for $5.
Right.
And yeah, I think they absolutely knocked it out of the park. They proved that by a mile. We and the two or three others that kind of started with them. And the quality is amazing, easy to work with.
Yep.
They listen to what the designer has to say. It's fantastic to work with them.
And now moving forward, now you're collaborating with Artisan. So that was another relationship that David had sort of established.
Yeah, it started out, I was wanting to get into doing some production stuff. I had some designs that I wanted to get going and see if I could branch out. And he knew Artisan. He knew David at Artisan. I can't remember the gentleman's last name right now, but one of the owners. Yep. And said that they're doing OEM work, and they would be a good way to get in because they were looking to get more people involved with OEM, and they were willing to work at lower numbers that I could afford. And that's basically how we opened the door. And the next thing I know, got an email from them like, hey, would you like to do a collaboration? Like, okay, sure.
And so that's the Proponent?
That's the Proponent, yeah. I've been wanting to do the Proponent for a while. The design concept is based off of a fixed blade knife I did called the Warning. I've had that around for, that's one of the first knives I ever made. And I actually started the Warning with Miyako. We did a fixed blade version and much smaller version. And it surprised me because it didn't last that long in production, but it had, I hate to use the word, but it almost seemed like this cult-like following, because I still get emails, people asking, hey, where can I get the Miyako Warning? It's not produced. Do you still have any?
That's cool.
And it's just, people love it. And I never understood why it got canceled because it was so affordable. It sold well, but it's that mystery in the corporate world where businesses do what they do for whatever reason they do it.
So let me ask you, actually, you bring up an interesting point, which is almost this cult following. I have definitively seen a number of your different blades that have a very distinctive style. Your Wharncliff style is a very distinctive style. What is it about that? Is it like your angle ratio? I mean, is there like a specific geometry that you create from time to time that has now, in my opinion, become your signature look?
I would like to say that there was a lot of thought into it, but there really wasn't that much thought. The Warning specifically, and by extension the Proponent, started life, I was trying to make a small pocket version of a sax.
Aha. Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
I could never get the handle right, so it took me a while of drawing, playing, prototyping. and I ended up with the warning. I didn't feel quite comfortable calling it a sax because it didn't quite fit a sax the way I saw it.
Right.
So it was kind of a modified wharncliff. So nobody was using the name warning, so I took that.
Interesting.
And
Nice.
the design, basically how that evolved from the sax was ergonomics. I wanted to fit the hand. I've always been a big believer in maximum blade length with minimum handle. A lot of people look at that and say, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, it started off because I have small hands. So I wanted one that fit my hand right.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
What I found was actually that, contrary to what a lot of people think when they look at it, it's like, oh, that's just too small, it'll never work. Well, it works for most people. I had very few people that couldn't pick up one of my knives, regardless of hand size, and it didn't work for them. So I've been staying with that concept. So I go for what fits my hand, what it feels good. I think about the angles, what the purpose of the knife is, and try to adapt more intuitively instead of actual design process or any geometry or numbers. And it seems that how ergonomics works for me seems to fall into that pattern where you see a lot of similar shapes. That just seems to be what works.
Nice. And no, that makes a lot of sense. So in other words, the ergonomics and how it fits your hand is driving the design process versus the design needing to fit your hands. And I think that's a great way to approach a design. And of course, to make one that fits your hands first is important. And I think that's where you get that physical connection to a knife. It's really interesting. And knives to me it's such an amazing world. And it's just such a funny thing sometimes to get drawn to, but they are good quality utility tools that really need to have that ergonomics in order for you to get the user experience that you're going for. So to design something in that light and start with the ergonomics, start with the fit in your hand, totally makes sense. So that's cool.
Yeah, I've never considered myself an artist. I'm always flattered when people say I do artistic work, but I'll take craftsman.
Yeah.
I can work with that, and that fits in my brain a little easier. And that's the thing, is when I make a knife, 9 times out of 10, it's got a function. There's a purpose driving it. I will occasionally make a knife that just looks cool, and because it's fun. I mean, let's face it. That's, if you're not having fun with what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it. So I do occasionally make one out in the left field that has, you look at it and you're like, all right, that's not what you usually do. Well, just me having fun. But almost everything I do is purpose driven.
Nice. So would you say that you're at this point more partial to fixed blades or folders? Is it a 50-50 split? I mean, where do you fall in that line?
I would say probably 50-50. A long time ago, back in the old dark days of the internet, when it was bulletin boards and forums, there was I can't remember the guy's name. I think he's still around on some of the forums, but his whole thing when we would talk about folders and fixed blades, he always said, all a folder is a broken knife. He said, it's just a broken knife that somebody, tried to make work. He said, and that always sticks in the back of my head. And everybody wants a folder to be the answer to everything. They want to make it so it'll stand up to getting run over by a tank, or somebody shoots it, or they want it to be indestructible. And while that's fun and it's a great exercise in what is possible with engineering, it's still kind of what that guy said is still in the back of my head. It's still a broken knife. So yeah, I want to make the strongest, I like designing folders, and I want it to be the strongest, best folder I can make, but I have no illusion that it's indestructible. It's still in the back of my head, conceptually, a broken knife. So it can only do so much.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, because that's a real cool segue into the reason why we're really talking today. So we do have this folder here that hopefully won't be a broken knife. Now, there's a few things to this. And I think now that we're talking about developing some criteria for testing, I think it's important to actually get data out of this. And it's hard to say whether or not we're actually taking measurements or whatever, stress readings. I don't know exactly what this testing means. However, what I do know is this knife was built for an intended purpose. And if we're going to hard use this blade, I think we need to use it for its intended purpose first. Now, it could be a self-defense weapon, or in that regard. I'm not saying we're going to use this for self-defense, but what I'm saying is, if that's the case, then this to me would be for more, call it like, I don't know whether you call that like, it's not really lateral movement, right? It's more like plunging or straight cuts. If we're going to test this, is it fair for me to be torquing on this blade? I mean, it gets a little bit thin. We should talk about the materials. I mean, it's S35. It's a nice steel. It's a titanium handle. It has the opportunity to install the pin. We have a frame lock. So, I mean, the handle construction, there's no doubt is going to be really stout. But what I'm wondering is, where should we go in terms of how we test it so that we're fair in developing at least a baseline? And then when do we call it and saying everything from here and beyond is really hard use and almost abusive? And if it was to fail at that point, well, that's reasonable. It's to be expected. And I guess I'm wondering on your take on that and how you feel about it in general.
I think that is a fair place to start, trying to determine what the purpose is, establish that, and as you said, get a set point on what is considered abuse. I look at the knife, and when we designed it and the dimensions and how thick everything is, the idea was to try and take a wharncliff and make it something that you could do some heavy use with. So let's start at the extreme end. Would I say pounding it into a block of steel and then trying to penetrate that is abuse? Yeah, that's abuse.
Yep.
However,
so like in other words, if I was to go to a junkyard and try to hammer this through the side of a car door,
I would honestly say it could probably handle a car door, because that steel's not that thick.
Yeah.
And the blade is stout enough, and the angle of the tip should penetrate pretty well. What you're going to be looking at is the snapping lateral load on that tip.
Correct.
That's the question mark. And I would say where I was kind of seeing this going, thinking in the outdoor realm, splitting wood, small pieces of wood where you could baton it. The tip should be able to handle some fairly robust wood. Is it going to go through a big log? No, but you should be able to do some work on some smaller pieces of wood without fear of damage.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a ton of the way of overall blade length, but that we could certainly go through 1.5 inches, maybe almost even as much if we're careful, 2 inch, maybe 1.75 inches, 2 inch piece.
Yeah.
And at that point, I mean, what's going to be interesting is to see the splitting action. I mean, this is a beautifully shaped wedge.
Yeah, so that should do well for that.
I think it'll do great. And I'm myself personally more of a woodscraft guy than a tactical guy. So my first inkling would be to go to woodscraft. I mean, I'd love to see this, even going as far as to process a full fire. I bet you could do it with this. What I was curious about is, yes, we can install the pin, but does it make sense, in essence, to try some of this without the pin? I'm thinking first we install the pin, right? Because if we install the pin first, we're not stressing on the actual lock.
Correct.
So, and then if we're successful there, maybe all the testing we do with the pin in, we can remove the pin and do the same realm of testing without it and see if there's any issues with the locking mechanism.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to go with that. That way, as you said, you're not stressing the lock early on, and you will have the chance to see what the blade can do.
Yep.
And then come back and repeat and see if the lock is capable of standing up to it, which it should be able to. The one thing that a lot of people, speaking about lock strength and lock slipping, the fit and finish, the machining that companies are doing nowadays is amazing. So you don't get a lot of lock slip these days. It happens occasionally, but it's not like it used to be.
Yep.
But the other thing to remember is because you have those two surfaces working together, again, back from the dim, dark days of the old internet, there was a guy on there, he could make anybody's lock fail, didn't matter who it was. What he understood, well, I think it was more of an intuitive thing, kind of that resonant frequency, where if you are able to hit the back of the blade just right, you'll be able to get that resonant frequency. That could be the wrong term.
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, the vibration and the shock through it. Yeah.
And you can get the lock to slip. He was able to get pretty much anybody's lock, didn't matter who it was, with the exception of maybe like the old Benchmade when they first came out with their what's the name of the lock now? I can't think of it. Oh darn it! I can't think of the name of the lock now. But
Axis lock.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Yep.
The Axis lock. He couldn't get that one because it was a different mechanism.
Right.
But any frame lock or even back locks, he was able to get back locks to fail and liner locks. So
interesting.
That's the only thing that I would be interested to see, is if anybody could find the resonant frequency, if you're testing that, to see if you would be able to get it to fail.
Yep.
So far, I have not been able to.
So for the people watching, I mean, there are two versions. We have a slightly smaller version, more of an EDC size. But for this particular test, we are going to be using the larger. And I don't personally see the reason to beat up on two perfectly good blades. I have to tell you, I have carried this smaller version now as an EDC for probably 2 months, roughly. This thing is awesome, man. It's first off, the machining is outstanding. They have done a great job. So, I mean, you've teamed up with somebody who's really paying attention to the details. The fit and finish is really amazing. And from the overall design perspective, it's a perfect size in your hand. The blade is really comfortable. You can get a couple of real nice grips for utility work. But what really catches me the most, that I greatly enjoy, and it's such a simple thing, but people get it wrong a lot, the clip. This clip is phenomenal. It's flat. It's nice. I like the depth. It's not a deep ride, but I wouldn't want it to be. And the knife is thin enough, yet stout enough. It's almost like a oxymoron, but it's the perfect balance between heavy duty weight, but slim and easy carry. So very nicely done.
Yeah, I was very pleased with how that turned out. I've been carrying mine almost nonstop. So it just fits my hand perfectly. The big one fits well, but this one just drops right into my hand. Again, small hands, it's perfect.
Yeah, no, it's nice, man. So, I just wanted to commend you on this. I mean, your whole entire team, I mean, between you on the design end and, their manufacturing, and it's a really, really nice total presentation, and even little things. And I talk about packaging sometimes, which, whatever, it's a package. However, when you get something in your hands for the first time and you have that first impression, and people are sweating the details and they're looking at their packaging, and when you open it up and it just, the layers, you continue to like peel back and unfold, and every turn you're equally impressed at the packaging. I mean, this really is, from the beginning to the end, every single turn of the way, a complete package. So nailed the design, nailed the fit and finish, nailed the presentation. And at this point, I mean, we're going to get into some hard use testing and benchmarking and really gauging what this knife can do. So great job. Really outstanding.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's it's been a big surprise. It's been a very pleasant surprise on how it's turned out. And I can't wait to see what you put it through and see what we got.
I will be hard but fair. And I will certainly be presenting you with some of these results and giving you a little follow-up, and the Artisan team's going to see what we do.
Absolutely. I look forward to it, and I'm always very much of the mind. I don't care what your criticism is, as long as you, like you said, it's fair. I mean, I've had some criticism about some things that you hear about that come from left field, and you ask, well, why were you doing that? That has nothing to do with a knife. But yeah, if you come across something and you say this is wrong or this is where it failed, that's fine. It doesn't insult me. That just tells me that I need to work on something. That's all.
Yeah, it's data points, and I think sometimes you have an intended thought and an intended use for your blade, but then outside of that realm, you have people from all walks of life doing all kinds of things and using things in different ways, and you can't control that. But at least here, we have a collaborative process. We're thinking about this together. We're discussing it. We're coming up with some ideas on what we could do. And you know what? I think that adds a lot of value in testing, and something that, to be honest with you, I haven't seen too many people reaching out to the designer to say, hey, man, I'm thinking about you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That is a rare thing. So you're absolutely right, and that's very much appreciated.
Yeah, cool. So just a couple last things. You had mentioned that you'd been to SHOT Show in the past. You're going to be there in January?
Not this time through. Got way too many orders to get caught up on, and got some other things happening. So I want to get back. It's fun. I enjoy SHOT Show a lot. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Vegas, but I enjoy SHOT Show. And,
Yep.
So I'm hoping maybe if not 2020, maybe 2021.
Cool.
But I'll definitely be at Blade, and I'm looking to add a couple more shows to what I do throughout the year. So maybe Blade West. I may look at maybe the New York show. Don't know. I gotta see where things are.
Excellent. No, yeah, I'll be going to SHOT Show for my first time this year, so I'm excited, and I expect to be back at Blade in Atlanta in 2020. So I'll definitely catch up with you there. But you not only collaborate with these other companies, you're your own brand, you're your own business. How do people find you?
Primarily through Instagram has been the big one. I used to try and just do it by word of mouth, and that only gets so far in this day and age. So yeah, Instagram, Pinkerton Knives, and my website, pinkertonknives.com. Still working on the kinks out of my website because I did it myself, and I am not a tech guy, as we discussed. This is my first Skype call, so I'm way behind the times on that. So if you go to my website and it seems a little clunky, don't walk away. Just send me an email, ask a question. Yeah. Just understand I'm good at knives, not good at websites.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. And you know what? I'd rather you be good at knives. So,
thank you. Me too.
yeah. So no, hey, thank you, Dirk, man. This was great. Really, really appreciate your time. I mean, I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot of things going. We've been trying to get this going for a while now. So thank you for bearing with me. If there's anything you'd like to add, certainly feel free. But other than that, man, I got a little bit of work to do. I'm going to start preparing for some testing.
Well, I appreciate it. I will say that keep your eye out. There's a couple of new designs coming out with Kaiser. You should be seeing at SHOT Show.
Nice.
We got the Shard, which is a small gentleman's folder. Just finished tweaking that. It should be at SHOT, I was told. And then there is a knife called the Inversion. It's been on Instagram. Did the final tweaks on that, and that should be there. And then we spoke of it earlier. You saw it on Instagram. The knife has currently got the working name Reliant, but it's the new exposed blade stop folder with the Conto.
Awesome.
That should be that should be there. I believe they're going to try and have something there. Depends on if they have the time to get the little tweaks done that we need.
Great.
And there are some Artisan and I have got some other irons in the fire. We're trying to hammer out the details on. So look for some more stuff from Artisan. And I'm talking to some other companies, so I'm hoping to get some other stuff going. I'm enjoying collaborating because it gives me an opportunity to get designs out there that I would not be able to do otherwise.
Amazing. That's great.
So
excellent.
Thank you very much for the time, and thanks for doing this, and I appreciate being involved.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We'll talk very soon. Take care now.
All right, take care.
We'll see you soon.
See you.
So now that we've talked with Dirk, we have a little bit of a better understanding of exactly where we're going to go with this. Now the testing is still a little bit up in the air, but at least we know why the designer designed these knives the way he did and what his original intended purpose is. That to me is very important because when a designer puts their name on a knife, that's their reputation. So if I'm here doing hard use testing of a blade, I want to make sure I keep that in mind. But moving forward, we are going to have some serious hard use testing of this full-size 1820G Proponent in titanium, S35 VN steel, an absolutely magnificent blade. And the next time you see this, we're going to get it out into the field for some good quality hard use testing. So alright guys, I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now, keep your eyes open, because this will be doing some good hard use testing, and we'll see you soon.